All right, today's daily devotional is How Quickly We Forget. This is where it's from, the book, Women's Devotional Bible. Okay, it says frigid weather on the crossing, and today is a frigid weather. Today is about like 10 degrees outside, and it feels like a negative. Frigid weather on the crossing, a food storage, a desperate need for shelter in a dark wilderness winter, contrasted with the dire straits of the Puritan pilgrims faced their first winter in America. Religious prosecution might have seemed downright appealing, at least in England, but they could have had a hot meal while being ostracized. Their plight in the New World included death from sickness and starvation. Suffering sears the human spirit so fully that we begin to believe lies about the past, and even more dangerous, the future becomes a dead wasteland in the clouded vision. We tend to doubt God's goodness when we follow him through difficult experiences. Trapped by physical, emotional, or spiritual pain, we long for happier times. We may even wish for death over pain before we acknowledge God's presence. God cares for us beyond imagination. Although we know that, how do we feel it when our guts tighten with fear and sense of abandonment? The moment the Israelites didn't get the food they craved, they began to blame Moses and Aaron. How quickly they forget the God who had brought them out of Egypt. You might think God would react with anger. Those ungrateful people, grumbling, after all I've done for them. I'll just let them starve. But instead, God chose to rain down bread from heaven. Though the Israelites remembered Egypt fondly and blamed their deliverer, the Almighty still chose to provide what they needed. Provision doesn't always arrive as tangibly as manna from heaven, but gut-wrenching starvation afflicted the pilgrims in a very real way. Many of them died that first winter. Sometimes we forget that the world groans under the weight of a curse, that God's love doesn't instantly remove all discomfort, the far-wrenching effects of the fall from our lives. But hidden in God's nature, we find answers. When the world threatens to crush our people, we must cling to the knowledge of God's goodness. Even when our feelings tell us otherwise, that we miss England or Egypt, or another decade of our lives, knowing God's goodness will gradually restore our sight. Then we can see our situation clearly, as daughters of a heavenly Father who desires our good more than we possibly can imagine. Some reflection questions. In what ways have we been brought out of Egypt? What circumstances cause you to look back? What do you look back to? How often do you blame others for circumstances God has allowed in your life? How has God graciously provided for you for your needs despite your grumbling and complaining? Spend some time praising the bread of life, Jesus Christ, for feeding your soul. So if this hit home for you, definitely leave a comment down below if you want to answer some of the reflection questions in the comments. Share this with a loved one who you think might need to hear this today. And have a blessed day.